don't see, does that say recording? Yeah, there it goes. Okay. All right, so now we're recording, and I wonder if it's recording what's on this screen over here, I guess is my question. Or if it just records what's on this screen here. Maybe I should bring it over here. Let me just change this just to make sure that I've got the right things being recorded here, you guys. Thanks for your patience. So I'm going to bring this over here. Okay. Can y'all still see the
Yes.
presentation? Okay. And I'm going to see if I can bring this over here on my other screen where I can see y'all on this other screen, just to make sure I'm recording the right thing. All right. Well, we'll get started. Let's see. I'll just do it this way here. All right. So what was I going to say? I had something else I wanted to say. So again, welcome. I did take attendance. If you need ELA credit, I put that in the shared Google folder. Were y'all able to get into the Google folder to get the slide deck and the ELA credit?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. And anybody, if you've got any problems with that, just let me know, and I will try to fix that. All right. So this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the history of monitoring, the purpose, the documentation that's in the self-study, interviews, the GT individual report, other reports, and the corrective action plan. So that's what we're going to start with today. So let's start with the history. So several years ago, yes, I've been here about 8 years ago. So I want to say probably about that time, Dr. Holliday was commissioner. And prior to Dr. Holliday, people would, their programs would go out at different times during the year. And Dr. Holliday wanted to cause less disruption to people's schedules, so he asked for the programs to all go at one time. And that's how consolidated monitoring came about. And there are pros and cons to that, because if you're a small district and you wear a lot of hats, you may have a lot of preparation to do for the different programs that you oversee. Whereas if you're a large district, you know, it can still be very challenging because of the numbers of students and schools, of course, that you oversee and work with. So there's some good things, and then there's some challenges to that. And so I hope to make this process as easy for you as possible. All right, so the purpose of monitoring is just to make sure that districts are in compliance with the regulations. So there's 10 sections in our gifted regulation, so we'll go through all those in a second as we look at the self-study. Also to make sure that funds are being used appropriately. To also provide technical assistance, you know, if you've got any questions that you have, or if I see things that, you know, maybe I could provide some suggestions about, that's what it's for. And also to give me a chance to get some ideas, because I have people that ask me all the time, you know, around the state about, well, you know, where do you see, you know, a good primary talent pool program? Or what about for high school? Have you seen any high school programs that are doing some things that you think are, you know, outstanding, or, you know, that maybe we could do here? And so it really provides me a good chance to see the great things that are going on in your districts, because I know that you guys are working really hard. And I know this is a really strange year with the pandemic. So just want you to know that I think about you guys daily, and hope that I can be of support to you, because I feel like that's my biggest job, is to support you. So here is the monitoring schedule. Can y'all see this okay, or do I need to make it bigger? Going all right? Okay. So this is the monitoring schedule. I won't go through all of that, but just in case, just to make sure, thanks, Robin, that y'all know when I'm coming, or when we'll be visiting, having our event. This is the different dates here. It runs from January through April. And usually about 2 weeks before that, I'll send you those random SSIDs, and we'll talk more about that in a second. All right, so I've sent you the self-study that has all the different requirements or documentation that we'd like for you to upload into the SharePoint site. And your district Title I lead, I'm not sure who that is for every district, should have given y'all a link to that. And Wendy Newton, who's our technical assistant for the monitoring visit, made folders, and she copied those folders over from when Dina Chafin was here last year. And since we had some districts who had already started using those folders, I tried not to change those folders very much to lend consistency to those districts who'd already started uploading things from last year's monitoring visit. So if you find, if you're not sure where to put things in the folder, just give me a call or shoot me an email or find me on Teams, and I'll be glad to answer any questions about where things go. But I think they're pretty self-explanatory. Has anybody had a chance to try to get into the SharePoint site?
I haven't received a link from my Title I person.
Okay. Okay. So I will do that then on probably next week then, Sherry. I don't know if I'll be able to get to it tomorrow, but I will try to send those links for you guys so you can be looking at, if you want to go ahead and be putting things in there that you can. So that's good to know, because every district has a different folder, so there'll be a link, 10 different links for me to email out to you guys. So any other questions about that, about folders or anything like that? Maybe I should just kind of show you what it looks like. Maybe that would be helpful too.
I'm just curious as to if the other districts have received theirs.
Has anybody else received theirs?
Harlan County has not.
I haven't received mine.
Okay. Okay, well, maybe they haven't sent those out yet, but I'll be glad to kind of show you what that folder system kind of looks like. All right, so like this, can y'all see the statewide consolidating SharePoint
Yes.
screen page? Okay. All right, so we'll just, Heather, if you don't mind, I'll just, I'll just do Henderson County because y'all are first up. And Henderson had started putting things into their folder from last year. And so what I'll probably do is send you the link right here to the Gifted and Talented folder so that you can get into that one. Okay, so when you click on the Gifted and Talented folder, you've got 10 different folders here. And this is where you'll put the different documentation from the self-study. And in the first folder, I went ahead and put that self-study, gave you another copy of that in case you needed it. And Henderson has got their, what was called the report, which is what I'm calling the self-study. They've got that in there from last year. And then there'll also be, I'll be putting some forms in here for the phone interview schedule. Although Jill, I know y'all have got some things set up, and so you and me can talk about that, at a different time about if y'all want to still use that schedule or if y'all want to change that around. So I'll be contacting you guys, like I said, a couple of weeks before the visit, and we'll talk about how y'all want to set up those interviews. If you think you need more time for that, if you think I should contact you a month before that, I could do that. What is y'all's thinking on that? How much time do y'all need, do you think, maybe to set up some interviews?
Can you hear me?
Do you want to answer that?
That's what I was saying. I'm having a hard time here cutting over. I apologize. Yes, we probably need to revisit those times just because that was, before March last year. So maybe you and I could talk, and I can talk to a few of the others. And I just want to make sure that I am including the right people on the interview sheet for this year. So
okay, that sounds good. Yeah,
okay.
And we're going to talk about that some more in a second.
Okay.
So but that's what those look like. That's what the folders look like, you guys.
Thank you.
And the different, no, thank you. And that those documentation goes into the different folders here. Okay. We can come back that tomorrow some more if you need.
Yeah.
Chad, did you have something you want to say?
Yeah, if we could do that before Christmas break, because the way our calendar is structured this year, all of our staff and everybody basically will be off over Christmas break. So if we could do that sometime, maybe me, you, and Jill get together on a call and do it sometime between now and Christmas break, that would be fabulous.
Yeah, that would be great. You know, Pate, that this is 2 hours, but if we have a little bit of time left over and y'all have got a second or two, maybe we can even talk about it at the end of our training today. But we'll just see how that goes. But yes, definitely, Chad, we could do that.
And feel free to show everybody on the call any of the stuff that we've got in there. So feel free to go in.
Okay.
Yeah, please feel free. We're not harboring any secrets or anything. And trust me, we were looking when we were supposed to go through this before COVID, we were reaching out to others and looking back. So
right.
Definitely.
So we show everybody any of it.
Okay, cool.
Definitely.
All right. Well, thank you for that. All right, so let's talk about the first section of the self-study. This is the policies and procedures. That's what we're going to look at first. Okay, so question 1 says, does the district have an operation and available for public inspection local board approved policies and procedures which address each requirement of the gifted regulation, and it gives the KAR number and some other statutory numbers that are in the KAR. And so what's required is that you upload your district's gifted and talented policies and procedures. And many of the things I'll be looking for should be in your policies and procedures. And just remember that procedures fall underneath policies. And usually your procedures are put into like a gifted handbook or something. They're what spell out the policies, if that makes any sense. Like, for example, you know, you'll have an identification policy, correct? Well, then there'll be 5 different, you know, identification areas in the gifted regulation. And so most people have some sort of broad general ways that they go about identifying students for general intellectual ability. They may say we are using a, you know, we'll be using a cognitive assessment. Sometimes they'll talk about when they're going to be doing that. Then they'll say we'll also be looking for teacher recommendations and also for a characteristic list of behaviors for general intellectual ability. They may, you know, they'll list out kind of what they're looking for, spell it out rather than just, you know, just say we have an identification policy, which will be in the policy, but then the procedures will spell that out. So, and then you have to have your policies and procedures posted for public inspection. And so a good place to put that is on your web page. So if you don't have that now, I would say that put it and put your, you know, web page URL, your www or http /:, you know, copy and paste that right here where I can look to see that that's been publicly posted somewhere. You know, if y'all don't have that publicly posted somewhere, you know, on your web page, some people like keep a handbook out, I guess, or policies and procedures at the board office, but these days that's really hard to get to. So I would really encourage you to post that on your website, your district website. Any questions about that? And maybe I can give a, let's see here. District policies and procedures. So here is Henderson's. They've got their handbook here, and then they've got their policy, their KSBA, Kentucky School Board Association. Many people, you'll see this particular policy here. And then for their handbook, they've got the revised handbook that they worked on probably prior to last year. It's taking a little bit to load, but people will generally have, you know, a handbook and it'll say the year and, you know, the district, that type of thing. And it'll usually spell out, let me see if I can give it a minute to load here. You know, they're different types of things. So theirs has an introduction about their program, and they've got definitions of their gifted there. And as you can see, it talks about how they're going to test people and their gifted strands and their service options, and their identification process. So that's usually what that looks like. So any questions about that, you guys? All right. Well, if you think of something, holler. All right, so question 2. Has the district adopted policies and procedures for the identification and diagnosis of gifted characteristics, behaviors, and talent, and determination of eligibility for services, primary grade through 12, consistent with the KAR? This is section 3. And of course, this should be reflected again in your district's policies and procedures. And so I'll be reviewing those for this information. All right. Okay. And something that could go along with that is you know, as documentation would be also looking at the QA gifted and talented report. You know, taking a look at, you know, have you got students identified in the 5 areas and what grades are they identified in? I mean, that QA gifted report gives you a lot of information. Is there anybody that's not familiar with the QA gifted and talented report? Would y'all like me to bring that up and kind of show you how you get to that?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. I'll just bring that up here. So in Infinite Campus, we have the GT detail report and this opportunity and access report. And they have combined those reports into one KDE report. So underneath index, make sure you got your right year here. Underneath index, you scroll down into the KDE or Kentucky State Reporting, and then you'll open up that little triangle there and give you KDE reports. And then hopefully you'll have permissions to look at the QA gifted and talented report. Okay. And you can run this as a detail report, which gives you student level information. You know, it'll have the student's name, their grade, the school they're in, and then you'll see all the different categories across the right of the spreadsheet. And if they're identified in one of those categories, you'll see a 1 in the cell underneath that category for them. I think it also gives you information about free and reduced lunch, if you've got access to that information, their ethnicity, what else? If they're an EL student, their start date, their end date. There's a multiplicity of information there. And then you'll also, or you can also run an aggregate report, and this gives you total numbers for the ethnicities and subgroups and percentages for all of those things. So I'll just run that really quick and let you see that. I say really quick, sometimes you try to run things pretty quickly, and just depends on what's in the queue there at Infinite Campus, how quickly it comes up. So if you are looking for that in Infinite Campus and you don't see it, contact your district technology admin and they can give you permissions for that. So it'll run and you'll see a little PDF icon in the left-hand corner there. And this brings up your information. So it'll give you your total GT count, your total district enrollment, and this is showing state stats here. Okay. And it breaks it down by gender, by race and ethnicity, by your subgroup, your other student subgroups. That's on the first page. The second page gives you category information. So, you know, like in the state, we've got, whoops, sorry about that, about 21,000 GIA records and so on and so forth. Something to be kind of aware of is that, you know, we've got 79,000 students right now, but out of those 79,678 students, 17,865 are PTP, which is great. But you just have to remember, this is not a formally identified number here over here, this 79,678 number. And so when you're looking at our African American students, you know, it says we've got 4,950, but out of those 4,950, you know, 1,390 are a primary talent pool, right? So that gives you some information about your categories and your ethnicities in those categories, and your other subgroups, your free and reduced meals students, your students with the IEP, your foster students, your military connected students. And then the third page breaks it down by grade level. And so it tells you, you know, how many students you've got in kindergarten through 12th grade, and the different categories of those students. So it's a really good report, gives you lots of good information about your kiddos, and just thought I'd show you how that works. Any questions about that? All right, okay. So that's a good place to go to look at, documentation, and also just to have questions together about policies and procedures and those different things. All right. So this is question number 3. Has the district implemented a procedure to obtain information related to the interests, needs, and abilities of an identified student from his or her parent or guardian for use in determining appropriate services, and notifies a parent or guardian annually of services included in his or her child's gifted and talented student services plan and specific procedures to follow in requesting a change in services? So most people, for their procedure, they have some sort of form that they either administer maybe through Google Forms or Microsoft Team Sheets. However, sometimes they have a paper pencil form that they send home, with students for their parents to fill out about them. But usually that's the process, is there's some sort of form. And so you need to upload a copy of that form into the SharePoint site. If you've got different forms that are used for different grade levels, and upload all those forms. And also I'll be looking for a completed form in the student folders, and I'll be sending those SSIDs for those student folders to you 2 weeks before their actual review. So any questions about that? I always feel like that's kind of an open-ended question that maybe I should have, more specific questions or to ask you to see if, that's clear, whatever. Okay. All right, question 4. Has the district adopted a procedure for determining eligibility for services primary through grade 12? So to ensure that there's a process that's going on and that you have a GT selection and placement committee that reviews identification and selection, all the referrals, please upload those minutes and sign-in sheets from when your GT selection and placement committee meets into the designated folder on the SharePoint site. I realize that may be a different process for you guys, and so we're doing remote, hybrid, and in-face instruction this year. But hopefully y'all are still taking, minutes about that, about what's going on with that, even if y'all are meeting, through Zoom or Google Meets, however y'all are doing that. Also, include any other documentation that has a committee. For example, you might have some presentations or slide decks that maybe you've developed to go over with your GT placement committee, what to be looking for, what the process will be for, reviewing information. You might have an agenda where this is, where your identification procedure is an item on the agenda. So, yes, Heather, you got a question?
Yes, ma'am. On the minutes and sign-in sheets, we do not have a sign-in sheet per se. We actually pass the documentation folder around the table in our committees and have folks sign on that. Will that be sufficient for sign-in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And then how far back do you want those to be uploaded? Do you just want the current school year?
I think that would be appropriate. Yes, the
Okay.
current school year would be good.
Okay,
Right.
so then depending on whether or not we're in person or not, just whatever we are doing for the school year.
Yes, that would be
Okay.
good. Good question.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, and I know that oftentimes committee members, you'll have sometimes there will be a form that members will sign that will be inside student folders. So if you've got that as a documentation, that's a good thing to also include in your upload. Just if it's got any kind of student information, redact that. Don't include any kids' names or SSID numbers in the SharePoint. Okay.
Is there privacy for the folks' signatures as well then?
Let me write that down as the question, because that's a good one. I don't know. Because if you've got a list of those people, so when you say privacy for their signatures, just to make sure no one could copy that signature, is that what you're saying, Heather?
I don't know. I'm just curious if it's okay to put, individual signatures onto a SharePoint, or if that would need to be redacted. If you could see that that's a required element.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'm just asking.
All right. I'll ask our policy advisor and get that back to y'all about that question. Okay, that's a good question. I've written that one down. Thanks,
Well,
Heather.
and at least currently we're meeting remotely, so we're going to have more of a digital signature. So do we just make that note to you that the digital signature is available?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be fine. And I'll ask about that because that's a good question. I wouldn't want people putting their, personal information on there. That might be considered personal. I have to ask about that. That's a good question.
Kathy,
All
I have
right.
a question about,
Yeah, Jean.
you said current school year only. Is that just for question 4?
Yeah, I'm mainly looking at the current school year for most of the questions. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So when we upload documentation, how far, I guess, for all of the documentation, how far back do you go?
It should be for the current school year. It should be for like for the budget. We're going to talk about that. I'd like to see the budget for this year and then for last year.
Okay, thank you.
I think. Although, we looked at the budgets, or at least the budget person in finance should have looked at those budgets. And if there were any questions, that should have come to light last year. So I don't want to make y'all upload more than necessary because I know y'all have got a lot on your plate. So I would say let's just stick with the current school year unless there's some, questions that come up and we want to, look back or whatever. So let's just say the current year then. Okay. Yeah.
Kathy,
Yes.
back to the SharePoint folder. I
Yeah.
asked my consultant just now when we would get access to that, and she said we won't get access until 6 weeks prior to our event. So
my person said the same thing. I walked over and asked her too. She said 4 to 6 weeks before.
Well, and I don't know about everybody else, but I'm not comfortable with 6 weeks prior. I'd rather go ahead and start working on this because ours isn't until April. So I just created a Google folder with folders of all the programs in it, and I'm going to go ahead and start placing stuff in there until we have the SharePoint site.
Okay. Well, I can also check with the Title I person to see if I can give y'all access to that sooner. I'll write myself a note about asking Erica about that. Erica Tipton is the lead for consolidated monitoring. And I'll ask her, can I give that earlier than 6 weeks? I'll get back to you on that too. But that's a good idea though, Sherry, to go ahead and just, have a Google folder where you're putting stuff as you collect things. That's a good idea too. All right. Question 5. Does the district have a screening process that provides equal access for racial and ethnic minority children, disadvantaged children, and children with disabilities? And so this should be reflected in your district's policies and procedures. And I'll be, looking for that in those policies and procedures. Also, again, the Q&A Gifted and Talented report could be reviewed and discussed with the GT coordinator and teacher. And we can look together at the data just to see, what the data maybe says to us or doesn't say to us, just looking at that. Question 6, does the district have 3 pieces of evidence that document the eligibility of students selected for the gifted services grades K through 12? And so what I'm looking for are these different pieces here. It depends on the district. Different districts collect different things. So I'm looking for, assessment score sheets, anecdotal observations, checklist of behaviors, teacher recommendations with supporting observations, student portfolios, special considerations information, if appropriate, any evidence to support student identification, and identification evidence that matches the information entered in the student's Infinite Campus GT record. So I know that this one has come up, this last bullet about GSSPs and things like that matching. That is what the data standard says, that whatever's in Infinite Campus should match what's on the student's GSSP. So any thoughts or comments about that?
I have a question, Kathy.
Mm-hmm.
Are those going to be students where our district has the original record, or are transfer students going to be included in that monitoring?
I won't know if they've transferred or not, because like I said, it'll be a random selection of SSID numbers, so it can be students who've transferred in. Mm-hmm. And hopefully, you know, we've been trying to have a better records process for the past 8 years. So those kids that I guess when I started were in 4th grade, they should be in 12th grade by now. So hopefully people have started having a better folder process. I do know that that's an issue for people. And in talking with other districts, what they have done sometimes, if they don't have that information or haven't been able to collect that information, they put, you know, documentation in the student's folder that they reached out to so-and-so on so-and-so date, and then followed up on so-and-so date and still weren't able to get the information that they need, just to show that a good faith effort was made to get that information. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because you can't always, you know, do any more than you can do, but that does show the person that's, you know, reviewing the folder that you've made an effort to get that information. And then special considerations information too. It's very important to document, you know, why that student was selected for special considerations, you know, for the area that the child was reviewed for. And, you know, some people have a form for, you know, the student didn't score at the night stay 9, but, you know, the GT selection and placement committee reviewed their other evidences, such as their other portfolio of work, their, you know, checklist of behaviors, their teacher recommendations. Those teachers still would refer them to be a, you know, a person that received gifted services. So that just needs to be somehow or other documented, short summary of, you know, why, you know, that student was selected, even though maybe they didn't meet all the criteria. And that's one of the ways that we have equity in our program, is through special considerations. So important to document, though, why that student was selected or identified. And then if you're using local norms, you know, that's good to have that documented somewhere too. If you decided to use local norms to identify a student, that's also good too. Any questions about that? All right. So question 7, does the district annually notify parents or guardians of services for formally identified students? So this is talking about, you know, does the district notify parents of their gifted student service plan for the student? And also, do they have specific procedures to follow to request a change in service? So sometimes people put that actually on the gifted student service plan, or sometimes in a communication that they send home with parents, they make sure the parents are how to contact them if they have any questions or concerns about services. And so it's good to upload, please upload a blank copy of your GSSP. If you're not using the one on Infinite Campus, then let me know that. And I'll be reviewing, you know, those gifted student service plans for kids. And we can talk more about that too. Individually, you know, I can be calling, I'll call you and set up a time to talk with you guys about whether or not you're using Infinite Campus, or if you're using you know, a district form that you've created. You can do either one. Because if you're using your own types of form and you're not going to be using Infinite Campus, then we'll have to talk about how to use the web application process. Just out of curiosity, is there anybody who you know, needs me to explain how the web application process works? I'm looking on my other screen over here just to see if there's a chat or. Okay, so everybody knows how that works. All right. All right, question 8, does the district ensure that school personnel report to a parent or guardian their progress? So I'm looking for progress reports. And so for that one, though, I'll need to probably look back to the year before as well, because there'll probably only be one progress report. And depending on when your nine weeks ends, you may not have a progress report in there for this year. So I'll be needing to look back to 2019, 2020, as well as this year for progress reports. Any questions about that? Okay. Just write myself a note just to make sure. That's what I look for. All right. So question number 9 is talking about the grievance procedure. So I need a you know, a copy of your grievance procedure and where that can be found. You know, if you've got the URL where that can be found, you can please put that right there on that particular on that line right there. Right. So most people have a policy, an overall policy, and then they usually have steps about what that policy looks like. Like, for example, the parent within so many days will, you know, submit in writing their grievance to the GT coordinator or to the principal. They'll usually have a point of contact where that usually goes, and then it spells out those things, and usually a bulleted list or a numerical list of the steps that will be taken, and it usually ends with the superintendent has the last say about, you know, any kind of appeal that's done. All right, the next section deals with services and curriculum. So question 10, does the district provide articulated multiple service delivery options for students in grades primary through grade 12? So I'll be looking at the GSSPs and the students folders to ensure that there are multiple services for each of the categories that students are identified for. So sometimes you might have a student that's identified in, you know, 3 or 4 more areas, and so I'll be looking on the gifted student service plan to ensure that they've got two services for each of those areas that they're identified in. Also, to ensure that there are services that are being offered to students, please upload GT teacher schedules on the SharePoint site. Sometimes I know that, especially during these days, that our regular ed teachers are providing, you know, services for students or helping the GT resource teacher to provide those services. So if you've got other documentation like lesson plans or correspondence to parents about upcoming events, flyers, any kind of emails that would show that services are being offered to those students, that would be good documentation to also provide in the SharePoint folder or in that student's folder that I'll be reviewing. Any questions about that? And if you think of things, you know, after we're finished with our meeting today, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and say, you know, what about this or what about that type of thing, because we definitely want to talk about any kind of documentation that you feel like would meet the compliance there, would show that you're meeting the regulation. Question 11, does the district ensure that direct services to students are being, you know, given by professionally qualified and certified personnel. And so this is talking about in that particular section about GT certified teachers. So I need for you to, like on a Word document, list the names of the GT teachers who directly are serving those students and the schools that they serve, and then also upload a screenshot from the EPSB website. I thought I saw somebody's hand go up there. So Heather, you got a question about that?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember. I started writing a note of something else that you
That's
said.
okay. I do that too.
Oh goodness. If we do not have, that's what my question was. I'm sorry. The direct services, are you speaking specifically to a pull-out program?
Well, every district has to have someone that they hire with that 75% of funds who provides direct instructional services, it says, to students. And so that can come in many different forms. So that's what I'm talking about there.
Okay.
So whoever, the district is hiring to provide direct services and using that 75%, and I know that sometimes that 75% doesn't cover, the salaries of all the people who have been hired to provide services. So if you have people that you have in addition 75%, or you've used all of the state grant, but any of those teachers that you've hired directly to work with students, either in pull out or cluster grouping, or to provide enrichment services, consultation, collaboration, those people who are directly working with the GT program. That's who I'm talking about. I hope that is clearer. Is that clearer for people? There should be at least one person in every district that 75% of funds is used to provide those direct instructional services.
Kathy, I have a question.
Yes.
On this one, you just want the names of that person who is 75% of the time, or all names of the teacher in our district who have a G endorsement?
No, I don't want everything in the kitchen sink there.
Okay.
I only
So
want the names of those teachers that are being hired by the district to provide gifted services to students.
Thank you.
There may be other people who have a gifted certification, but that's not their direct purpose. That's not their direct role. So thank you for clarifying about that. And I don't know if anybody's, been to the EPSB website, but, it's pretty easy to manipulate here. I'll just show you. So when you go to the EPSB website, I hope I put those initials correctly in my thing there. Underneath How Do I, you just go to check educator credentials, right? It comes up with this little web page. You put in the first name and the last name. You click search. Sometimes there'll be people that have more, you'll have more than one person, but you can usually look at the district to determine your person there. You click on the name and it'll give, all of their credentials when they expire. And so you can just use, like I've got this little snip and paste tool down here. You may have another tool, but you can just use that to, snip that person's credentials and put it onto the Word document. It's pretty easy. All right. Any questions about that? That was a good question about, do you list all of your people? No, just the ones that you've hired to directly work with your gifted and talented students. All right. Okay, program evaluation. Heather, you got another question?
I do. I'm sorry,
Okay.
Kathy. I'm going to go back to that.
No, that's why we're having this meeting, is to ask questions.
I'm going to go back to that piece on personnel because I'm looking at the regulation and it goes further than what's stated there. And I just want to get clarification, please. So for personnel, it says a local school district shall ensure that the direct services to students identified as demonstrating gifted and talented behaviors and characteristics shall be provided by professionally qualified and certified personnel, the piece that you have there. And then it says a teacher shall be appropriately endorsed in gifted education in accordance with 704 KR 20:280. If the teacher works A, directly with identified gifted pupils in addition to the regularly assigned teachers, or B, for at least half of the regular school day in the classroom made up only of properly identified gifted students. And then it goes on and has item 2 as the other thing. It says all other personnel working with gifted students shall be prepared through appropriate professional development to address the individual needs, interests, and abilities of students. So I guess that's the whole piece of that personnel section, and I don't feel like that's represented on that slide.
So it's broken up into some other slides that are going to come up and further along. This one just has to deal with that particular piece of this of section 8. So that's a good question. I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay, but so I guess my question to that would be, in a lot of cases, I'd say probably in most of our districts, a lot of our services are not specifically provided by a gifted teacher, say an AP or a dual credit or something of that sort. So in that case, we're ensuring that professional development is offered to ensure that that the folks who are working with the gifted students understand the nature of gifted. So I'm just asking because I don't want to get a ding there when we have procedures in place to ensure those things. It just doesn't feel like that personnel piece is comprehensive.
Okay. Well, if the other slides don't cover the rest of that section, then let me know and then we can talk about that some more. That's a good thing to bring up.
Okay.
All right.
But question 11, is that part of the self-study? I'm sorry, I don't have the self-study here open.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I've tried to pull those directly from the self-study there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question. All right, so let's talk about the program evaluation. So question 12 has to do with student progress. So you want to, upload. So I don't know if I should have probably done the whole thing, but program evaluations need to occur, annually in the district, and it needs to comprise of these different things that we're going to look at. And so the first one is overall student progress. So in order to document that, your district is looking at overall student progress, you want to upload those items that you talked about this, agendas, meeting notes, presentations, maybe where y'all looked at overall student progress, sign-in sheets, any kind of document that's going to review that overall student progress was talked about. And oftentimes people will look at MAP data, STAR data, state testing data. Of course, we didn't have any of that last year. Data where you looked at, scholastic testing, those types of things. And usually in some sort of a meeting, that's where that's discussed. So upload any kind of documentation that would show that student progress was discussed.
So Kathy, since there was no state assessment this past year, is this going to be scaled back a little bit maybe?
Well, since we're meeting, January through April?
I guess I'm just wondering, like in our district, we take MAP testing and we took fall MAP, but we were virtual at the time, and some students came in to take it in person and some students took it virtually, which we are finding the validity to be very low in the virtual assessment. So we've opted not to take the winter MAP, and I'm not sure we would have taken the spring MAP by the time April rolls around. And I'm not sure what we'll be comparing to see the overall progress if we didn't have data.
Right. That's a good question. And I think most people do their annual review either in March or April. And so since some people will be having their monitoring day in January, it probably be best to look back at your 2019, 2020 evaluation. Does that make sense? Because I don't think most people will have done their annual their program evaluation yet by the time we have our monitoring event. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So let's just write that down, that we're going to look at the program evaluation. All the documentation will come from 2019, 2020, because I don't think that's going to have occurred except for maybe Boone County. And Heather, I'm not even sure if you will have all of your stuff ready for an annual evaluation in April. So Heather, did you have another question?
Nope, I'm sorry, I didn't lower it after the last one. Apologies.
No problem. No problem. No problem. All right. Question 13 also deals with the program evaluation. So student, parent, and faculty attitudes toward the program. So please upload, a copy of your surveys from 2019, 2020 that you used to gather that program feedback from. Some people use like a Google, Google Forms for that. Some people, upload paper pencil. Some people do both. And then also upload just a written synopsis using a Word document of your 2019, 2020 survey responses. And you'll put those in the correct folder for that. So, what did your parents, what was your kind of your summary or your takeaways from your parent surveys? What was your takeaway from your teacher surveys, your staff surveys, and what was your takeaway from your student, surveys? Because you're hoping to get some feedback in order to either make improvements to your program or tweak your program, or just to be aware of some things, or even sometimes they respond and they say really great things about the program, about I really liked the way we did X this year, or really appreciated the fact my student had the opportunity to do blah 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 and enrichment or whatever. So just whatever, you'll be surprised at what those surveys will help with. All right. Question 14, community involvement. So, please uploading kind of flyers or newspaper articles or, emails that you send home about, we're going to be offering this community involvement type of thing, or anything that shows that, where the community was involved with your program, or vice versa, where you had a student or students who were involved in the community program. So it was kind of a two-lane road, just documentation about the community involvement in the GT program. Question 15, future program and directions. So just upload just a written summary. It doesn't have to be a novel, of the GT program's future program directions and modifications based on your data reviewed and your surveys that were analyzed, and also your community participation. And, upload any documentation such as meeting notes, agendas, slide decks that showed that your future program and directions were discussed. Okay. Question 16 is data collected in the annual program evaluation used in the school and district instructional planning process. So again, upload, agendas or sign-in sheets, slide deck presentations. I know when I was in the classroom, we would meet at least, at the very end of the school year to talk about, the different programs. And I know gifted was discussed in those programs usually at the end of the year about what services had been offered, what things we might want to offer in the future. Were our gifted students, we would discuss progress for those students and those types of things. So please, upload any kind of agendas or sign-in sheets, slide decks, just to document that this was discussed in the district instructional planning process for last year. Heather, have you got a question?
I do, yes, Kathy,
Okay.
and I'm sorry to
Okay.
be a broken record over here, but just asking about the end of the school last year, as I'm sure everyone experienced, we certainly talked about gifted, and we talked about how we were going to meet the needs and service the students in this unique environment of 2020. I can honestly say, though, that most of our discussion was not based on, annual program evaluation, but rather the current status of education. And I'm just concerned about how that's going to look. I mean, it's just an atypical year. So I don't know if there's a means to, I don't know. I just don't want to end up where, and I imagine a lot of us are in that situation where our discussion was more about how are we going to make sure we're meeting kids' needs, whether they're virtual, hybrid, in person, and pivoting, how we're going to handle those pivots. So program evaluation was on a back burner in the spring, to be really honest.
Right.
The results of that.
Right.
Only where it applied to COVID-19 would have been, what we would have used.
Right. That makes sense. Let me discuss that with my leadership and see what they say, because this is a regulation type thing, and while I totally understand and see where you're coming from there, let me talk to them about that particular question and see what they say, and then I'll get back to you guys about that. Yes, I hear somebody asking another question.
Jean from Harlan. I might just add on to that. We didn't get to finish our testing either, like we do screening in the spring with STAR is one of the things that we use, and we didn't get to finish that, any of that data. And we had actually met with our committee like the week that, like during the week of the last week that we were in school. And so what we reviewed from a program standpoint was just the program itself and not specifically the progress of individual students. So that might be where, because we didn't really have the data at that point to look at it. So that might be where other districts are, in their program review for last year as well. And we've actually started kind of looking at that this year with our fall screening, in hindsight, to kind of see what the gaps and what they may have lost since we have been out of school since Friday, the 13th of March.
Right.
Very appropriate.
Okay. Well, let me ask my leadership of what their thoughts on that would be, and then I'll need to communicate that to you somehow, either in an email. Hopefully I'll be able to communicate that succinctly in an email about what they say about that, because I see what you're saying about that. All right. Thank you for those thoughts, and I will get back to you on that ASAP. All right. Question 17. So this next portion talks about funding and personnel. And this is where some of those other questions that were about certification and teaching and instruction, that some of these questions will be in there. All right, so question 17 is, are state funds for gifted education used specifically for direct services to students who are gifted and talented? And so you'll need to upload a copy of your district's current school year GT budget on the SharePoint site. So that would be for this year, 2020, 2021. Upload that, and then there are Munis codes for all of the things that go for gifted education, and I'll be looking to ensure that those gifted codes are underneath the Munis column for gifted ed. Yes, Blossom.
Kathy, would you like that to be as specific as what the GT teacher is spending, the GT teacher's budget, or just what went to teacher and what went to materials, like the total amount of materials, or do you want individualized?
Good question. Just get with your finance administrator, and they'll be able to run that that budget for you, where it shows GT funds were used in the codes. Does that make sense?
The Munis report will show exactly what was spent per code.
Right. So it's your Munis report. Mm-hmm.
Right. But do you want like individual expenditures, or do you just want overall? Like this much was budgeted in 0610 and this much was spent in 0610.
Yes, I would like a more detailed account of how funds were spent, if that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks for that question. All right, let's see. Question 18. This is about the 75%, where 75% of GT funds used to employ, a gifted and talented teacher in addition to the regular classroom teacher to teach in the program. And so this should be reflected in your school's budget, on that Munis report. There'll be codes that will show, whether or not 75% was allocated for the GT teacher. Then question 19, are other personnel who work with gifted students prepared through appropriate professional development to address the individual needs, interests, and abilities of gifted students? And so please upload, sign-in sheets, agendas, copies of presentations, any documentation that shows that your other teachers who work with your students have that professional development that they need in order to understand how to work with gifted children. Anything that was presented, or any kind of training, that kind of thing. If you've got videos that you made, that would be good. I tried to give, just several different options there to show that professional development took place, and that starts from July 2020 to this current part of this part of the school year. Question 20. Does a district designate a gifted education coordinator? Do you have a gifted coordinator? And that person you need to make sure that person, that you've got a Word document with that person's, name, and that their screenshot of their credentials from EPSB. So I'll be looking at those credentials there. And to be a GT coordinator, you have to have that GT certification, 3 years of teaching experience, your master's or your fifth year program. If you don't have that, then you can be a supervisor of instruction, and that's not to be, mistaken for instructional supervisor or instructional, what is it called? It's usually building level, like your principal certification. It needs to be supervisor of instruction. That's different from that instructional supervisor role, or you can have superintendent certification. So I'll be looking to see if the person's got the correct credentials to be the GT coordinator there. And then I think this is the last question. Does the district submit an annual local district gifted education year-end report, a summative evaluation of the program and student progress, and comply with the gifted administration regulation? And so there's no need for you to submit that. I have a copy of that Dina shared with me, and so I can look and make sure that all those reports were submitted in a timely fashion from last year. And like I said before, I think that was the last question on the self-study. Does anybody have any questions about the self-study so far? Okay. All right. SSID for folders reviewed. So a minimum of 10 students, SSIDs will all randomly select those from the detail report, and we'll send those to you in an email. And I usually don't do more than about 10 or so, just because I am the only person in gifted, just like many of you are the only person in your district for gifted. And in order to do it effectively, I can't usually look more than about 10 or so. I might do 12, but I don't usually do more than that. I know IDEA does like 10%. I don't have the capacity to do 10%. So I'll be pulling kids, grades K through 12 to look at their folders. I usually pull some, from every category to look at. And student GSSPs and documentation, again, can either be reviewed through Infinite Campus, or you can use the web apps login. And we talked about that a little bit earlier. And does anybody need for me to show you how you can upload information into Infinite Campus, or would you rather just set up a time for us to talk about that individually? You know, what is y'all's pleasure on that?
Kathy, I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you repeat that, please?
Yes, so you can either upload your student documentation into Infinite Campus through the student's record, or you can upload it, and I'll have a way for you to save those files so that I know what I'm looking at if you use the web apps login information. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. I don't know which one I prefer since I haven't done this before, but
well, I've talked to a couple of people. We've done comparison folders with those people that had some compliance issues to correct, and most of them have found that Infinite Campus is easier than using the web apps login application.
I would guess so. I would think so.
Yeah.
And I've used them both, but not for GT, but I would think IC is the best way to go.
Yeah. It's fairly simple. I don't know if I can show you. Do y'all want me to show you this or not? Are y'all good? Okay. If there's, you know, like I said, I'll try to call you guys probably. I'll try to schedule those, let's say a month before I come, to talk about how you're going to upload that type of stuff, maybe. And if you have some questions about that, I can show you how to do that. But it's pretty simple in Infinite Campus, and it's right there in the student's, you know, record, so you know whose record it is. You don't have to name it, you know, with the student's ID number and all that. It's quite a bit simpler than using the web login.
So Kathy, I just have a quick question about that. So we would just upload those documents under the program participation for GT on the documents tab?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Let me just show you what that looks like real quick if I can get into the scrambled site here real quick. It never wants to keep my information correct. All right, so let me see if the student, so this is a sample student here, and I think I've created some documents for this student. All right, I don't have any documents here, but what you can do is you can upload a document here. You just click upload document, and you put the name of that document and say you want to put checklist of behaviors there, right? And then you look for that file, and somewhere on your folder, you know, somewhere on your, you know, computer, you'll find that the evidence for your student. Does that make sense? And then you just click open, and it'll put that information here, and then you'll see that in the student's documents there. Does that make sense? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, it's a lot easier, I think. I guess the only issue is there, you know, is that you'll have to scan those documents in.
It's a really good practice for us to do anyways. It's Blossom and I are kind of having a one-off conversation with you, Kathy, that we haven't been doing, but I think it's something we probably need to start doing in general anyway.
Right.
yeah,
I guess, yeah, go ahead, Blossom.
I was going to ask, so can parents see that on the parent portal when you?
No.
Okay.
No, they can only see custom forms.
Okay.
Those IC custom forms. Yeah. They can't see this information. No. All right. Any other questions? Those are good questions. All right, I'll go back here then. All right, because you have to, and another thing about that Blossom, I was saying, you have to publish, you know, what it is you want them to see. So that's not something we normally publish, you know, and put out there. Interviews. So might want to spread those out over 3 days. I mean, I'm at y'all's pleasure there, whatever y'all want me to do there. There'll be a form that'll be provided in the SharePoint folders. I can also email those out to you. Write myself a note to do that. And so let's see. Then just talking about the interview. So of course I'd want to talk with the GT coordinator, talk with that person for about 30 minutes, talk with the GT teachers for about 30 minutes. So if you've got more than one teacher, I'd like to, talk to each teacher, not as a group, but individually, set up, individual conversations with those staff members. Then I'd like to talk to some parents and some teachers. I thought maybe building administrators, but I really don't think that's necessary at this point. So maybe 20 minutes for each parent and 20 minutes for each teacher. So I'd like to talk to, 2 elementary teachers, 2 middle school teachers, and 2 high school teachers. And then again, 2 elementary parents, 2 middle school parents, and 2 high school parents. And these will be through Teams. These won't be through, me sitting down with them face to face or whatever. And if they don't have Teams, there's also that call-in number. They can use the number to call in. Although Teams is pretty easy to use, pretty much like Zoom. For parent interviews, please don't schedule any teachers. Okay, I want those to be, teachers that work with students that don't necessarily, the parents aren't necessarily teachers. And then I need to take out that word building administrators because we're not going to do them. And then for teachers, 2 may have, students that are in the gifted program. So does that make sense? Heather?
So we select those people. I'm sorry, I interrupted Heather.
No, go ahead, Heather. And then Blossom, you can say something.
Thank you, Kathy.
Sure.
Yes, you may have mentioned this and I may have missed it. How far in advance will we know the dates and times to schedule these interviews? Because I assume it's our responsibility to schedule this, correct?
Yes. So I'll go, let's see, make myself another forms. I'll go ahead and send those forms to you guys, hopefully by no later than the beginning of next week, because I know it can take a while to schedule all that. Of course, sometimes if you schedule things out too far in advance, people have things that come up, but I would think probably better to give people more notice and then to remind them than to not, give them as much, notice or reach out to people as soon as you could, correct? Thoughts?
I think it's going to help to know in advance. I'm just glad we're in April because right now to pull 2 teachers at each of those levels for 20 minutes, I would be really nervous to ask for that because I know a lot of schools are having a hard time with coverage. So fortunately we're in April, but I'd say some of the schools that are sooner might run into those issues if it's during a school day.
Well, I don't mind to do it after a school day. I know people are really tired after school, but do you feel like it would be better to do, to do some of these after school?
Maybe that's something you can consult with the individual districts on as you're planning. I don't know. I know that staffing is a constant concern right now.
It is. It is a really big concern. And, I had thought about maybe, basing it on the number of schools in the district, but for me, just my capacity, I don't know that I could do more than, 2 teachers. So that would be a total of, 6 teachers and 6 parents. Go ahead.
Will they all be at the same time? So will all 6 folks, teachers, all 6 folks, parents, meet at the same time, or will it be by level?
No, I'd hope to meet with them individually. So like if you had Joe Schmo from A elementary school, I would meet with him for 20 minutes. And then Susie Q from the middle school, I'd meet with her for 20 minutes. And then, Joe Schmo from the high school, I'd meet with him for 20 minutes. So it would be, spread out during the day, and also you could spread out during those 3 days of the monitoring event. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you so much, Kathy.
Yeah. What are y'all's feelings about? Because I hear you. We were talking about that. Sherry and me were talking about how it is really hard with all the COVID and stuff to have teachers, other people cover, teachers while day. So, I'm glad to do it after the school day to meet, whatever y'all need me to do.
So Kathy, we are going to actually schedule the times. Is that correct?
Yes. So let me see if I can bring up my form here, Jean, and I may need to tweak it to make it work better. Give me just a second to find it.
While you're pulling that up, I was just thinking, if we're going to schedule the times, then maybe we could work with their teachers to find out what's the best time for them. And like I know we're in a hybrid model, and so on Tuesdays and Thursdays we don't have kids in person, so it's a little easier for us to schedule teacher interviews on those 2 days. And I'm
right. Right. So this form looks similar to the one that I think that Henderson's got in theirs, but I've changed it just a little bit. And so I've got like day 1 here, and I put in like 9 to 3:30. But if we needed to schedule some like from 3:30, 4 o'clock, 4:30 or whatever, and do those across the 3 days, we could do that too, whatever we need to do. I know when we would do interviews, when I would do face-to-face interviews, oftentimes the teachers would come in, after school, and we would talk, after school, rather than someone having to cover their class, or for them to not get their planning period, because I wouldn't want that either. People need that time to plan. So, thoughts, you guys, on that?
Well, I have a question, Kathy.
Yeah.
Would you like us to include alternative school? We have a really small alternative school that currently does not have any students who are identified as GT in that school. Do you still want us to include that school in the interviews?
I guess if you don't have any students in that school, then no. But like I said, it doesn't have to be, 2 teachers from every school. It's just 2 teachers from your district. So 2 teachers in elementary school, 2 teachers from middle school, and 2 teachers from high school. Does that make sense? So if you've got an alternative school and you have gifted students, because I know just by looking at detail reports that people have students at some of the alternative schools, that you could include those. Those could be some one of your high school teachers could come from the alternative school if you wanted.
Yes, that makes sense. And I think with our since we're on a hybrid model and there's a lot of complications this year, I think we'll have to just look at those on an individual basis and work with those teachers on when's the best time.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, I think what it would probably be best to do is for me to send these monitoring schedules to you guys in an email, so that y'all can be thinking about and talking with your staff about how y'all want to schedule those. And then I can just reach out to you and follow up and say like a month before, the visit, just to see how things are going or something like that, if it's all right with y'all. So let me just say that again. I'm gonna email out the interview forms by the 1st of next week, no later than Wednesday, hopefully. and then y'all can be working on, inviting your staff there. And I just want to be clear again, it's not going to be, 2 people from every school. Okay. It'll be, 2 elementary teachers. So if you've got 14 elementary schools, pick, 2 teachers from those 14 elementary schools. Does that make sense? And if you've got 3 middle schools and pick, 2 teachers from your middle schools. I mean, it'd be nice if you had, now North and South Middle School, if you picked, one from North and one from South, but I'm going to leave that up to you. But I think that it should be, kind of a variety of people from your schools, if that makes sense. If you've got 2 high schools, then, 1 from each high school. But if you only have 1 high school, then, 2 teachers, and just schedule them at individual periods. Because it's hard to talk. I've tried to do it several ways. I've tried to do it in a group, and I've also done it individually, and it seems to work better individually, because sometimes there'll be one person that does all the talking and nobody else really gets a chance to talk in a group setting. So I've just found over the years it's easier to do it individually, and I'll have questions that I'll ask everybody the same question. I won't be asking, just random questions or whatever. So does that make sense, you guys?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. All right. Reports. So an individual GT monitoring report will, with conclusions and findings, if there are any, will be emailed 2 weeks after the monitoring event to the superintendent and the GT coordinator. And then a state consolidated report with all the programs, so Title I, Title II, all the titles, preschool, GT, that will be emailed, I think, 4 weeks after the monitoring event to the superintendent and to the Title I lead. I don't think it goes to all the programs. I think it just goes to those people, but I could check on that if you want me to. And it just kind of gives an overall, of the different things that were found and some suggestions and those types of things. If there's any findings, then the district will receive a corrective action plan, and that's emailed to the GT coordinator, and the coordinator has 2 weeks to complete the CAP, or the corrective action plan, and email that back to the team lead. So it'll be a form that has the findings, and then the district makes up the activities that need to be completed in order to correct those findings. And then once it's reviewed and emailed back, there'll be a place there for an approval and a date. If there's any revisions, then it goes back for revisions and then comes back to be reviewed again. The district has 1 year from the date of the monitoring event to complete the activities of the CAP. And during that year, there's 3 quarterly status updates with the GT team lead, which is me. And I work with the team to help them, correct anything that needs to be corrected, offer resources, ideas, feedback on the different processes and procedures or forms that need to be, updated or corrected, that type of thing. Any questions about that so far? All right. So again, I'll either a Teams meeting or a phone call. I'll schedule those with the GT coordinator before the monitoring event. At least 2 weeks before, maybe more. And we'll talk about those interviews, any questions about the process. If you're going to use the IC or the web applications login, that would be good for me to know and note so that I know where to be looking for that information. Any questions about that? All right. Okay. Well, you guys have been really great. I hope this has been helpful for you guys to know what's kind of coming down the pike. If you have any other questions that come up that you need any help with, feel free to reach out to me either, through phone or through email, however you want to reach out to me. I'll be glad to answer those questions. And don't forget that the slide deck is in our shared folder, as well as ELA credit if you need that today. I know some people their supervisor lets them, they don't need the ELA, sometimes they can swap that out for professional development. And I really am looking forward to getting to know you guys better. I know it won't be like a face-to-face visit, and I'm kind of sad about that because I always enjoy, seeing you guys and getting to meet you face-to-face and seeing all the kids in your buildings and things like that. But this is a unusual year. And I will be getting back to you about that, the privacy on the signatures, and about some of the questions about the current school year and the questions about the program evaluation. I'll need to talk to my leadership about that, about, how to look at that this year, so I can get back to you guys through email on that. And then also emailing out those interview forms to you guys. So, like I said, just so great to meet with you guys. Thank you for your time. And Chad, if you and Jill have got a moment, if you're not too tired, we can talk about y'all, since y'all are the first ones up. But if you're too tired and you want to wait till another day, we can do that too.
I'm okay. Chad, are you? I don't know what your schedule looks like this afternoon. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. Well, if you two guys will stay on, then I'll talk with you guys. The rest of you guys, I look forward to visiting with you, and y'all have a great rest of the afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome. Y'all take care.
Thank
And
you.
Chad and Jill, I'm gonna stop recording here.
Okay.